Page 290, Chapter 18. The Pharisees demand a sign. Emmanuel departed and escaped to the region of Sidon and Tyre. And behold, the Sadducees and Pharisees approached him, and demanded that he let them see a sign of his spiritual, or consciousness-based, power. But he answered, saying, quote, "In the evening you say, quote, 'Tomorrow will be a fair day, because the firmament is red.' And in the morning you say, quote, 'Today will be foul weather, because the firmament is dark and cloudy.' Therefore you can assess by the appearance of the firmament. Why then can you not also assess the signs of the time? This evil and disloyal generation is seeking a sign, but no sign shall be given to them, except for the parable of Jonah, who disappeared alive into the belly of the fish, dwelled alive in its belly, and then emerged alive again into the light. And he left them and went away." The leaven of the Pharisees. Verse 7. When they sailed across the sea and arrived at the other shore, they had forgotten to take along some bread. But Emmanuel said to them, quote, "Take care, and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees." They spoke to each other and said, quote, "This must refer to the fact that we had not brought along any bread or anything else." But when Emmanuel heard this, he was angry and said, quote, "You of little knowledge, why does it worry you that you have no bread? Do you not yet understand? And can you not find any thoughts or any understanding, so that you may understand my words? Are you then of such little knowledge and without discernment or understanding, that you cannot recognize the meaning? Do you not still understand, and do you intend not to understand for all times and to remain as unknowing ones? Do you not remember the 15 loaves of bread and the 30 fish divided among the 50, and how you then saved 2 half baskets? How is it then you do not understand that I am not speaking to you about the bread you eat every day? For I tell you this so that you may be aware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees." Then they finally understood that he had not said for them to beware of the leaven of the bread, but of the confused and falsified teachings of the scribes and Pharisees. Petrus's faith. Verse 17. Emmanuel came into the area of Caesarea Philippi, and asked his 3 disciples and 8 disciplesses, who accompanied him, saying, "Who do the people say that I am?" They said, "Some say that you are the resurrected Johannes, who carried out the custom of the initiation. Others, that you are Eliah or Elijah, and still others, that you are Jeremiah, Isaiah, or otherwise one of the old prophets." And he said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Petrus answered, saying, quote, "You are the prophesied Messiah, and a son of the living God, who is the spiritual ruler of the 3 human species." Emmanuel became angry and answered, saying to him, quote, "O you unfortunate one, my teaching has not made this known to you, for I instructed you in the truth. And I also tell you, you certainly are a loyal disciple, but your discernment or understanding must be compared to that of an unknowing child. You are Petrus, and I cannot build my teaching on your rock. You will open the portals of misunderstanding, so that the human beings will be overcome by your confused interpretation of my teaching, and will enter into it and live according to a falsified teaching for a long time. I cannot give you the key to the spiritual knowing realm, or realm of the spiritual teaching. Otherwise you would build wrong temples and open wrong portals with it. I am not the son of a spiritual ruler of the 3 species, and therefore also not the son of a living God, for he is a hazy picture or delusional construction, figment of the imagination. And I am Emmanuel, the son of the human being Joseph and the mother Maria, but procreated through the celestial son Gabriel. Furthermore, only the creation alone is ruling in a spiritual manner, and never a human being. Therefore, free yourself from this confused teaching and grasp or learn the truth. My mother is Maria, who truly conceived me through a celestial son, a descendant of our ancient fathers, who traveled here from the far reaches of the firmament, or outer space. And my earthly father is Joseph, who only acts as my paternal guardian. So grasp, or understand, this and free yourself from your confused prattle. Then he warned his disciples and discipleses that they were never to accept wrongly the speech of Petrus, and were not to teach it as falsehood, and that they were not allowed to carry forth or spread the prattle of Simon Petrus as a confused teaching. Advance notice of suffering, verse 28. From that time onward, Emmanuel began to tell his disciples and discipleses that he would have to go to Jerusalem and suffer much because of the falsehood, the anxiety, and the hatred of the high council, the Pharisees, and the Sadducees, and scribes, and the chief priest, since he could not help but bring his teaching to them. And Simon Petrus took him aside and spoke to him angrily, quote, "May God the creation prevent that. This must not happen to you, because they will strive to catch and torture and kill you." But he turned to Petrus, became angry, and said, quote, "Get away from me, delusional leader, for you are an annoyance to me with your prattle. You are thinking not in spiritual but in human terms, for a god is a hazy picture or delusional construction, fabulated by false prophets and priests and by other confused ones." Simon Petrus, again you make me angry and show your thinking which lacks understanding. Truly I say to you, owing to your lack of understanding, much blood will be shed in the world, because you will falsify my teaching and spread it confusedly and confusingly among the people. You will be to blame for the deaths of many human beings, as well as for the origination of a false name for me, and for the evil revilement, that I am the Son of God, and thus the creation itself. But you are still under the grace of my clemency, or forbearance, so you can still improve upon your lack of insight, or irrationality, to a certain measure, or to a small degree. Then Emmanuel said to his disciples and discipleses, who were in full number, or all, with him, quote, "Those who desire to follow my teaching should take upon themselves the burden of the search for truth, and of the recognition, and of the understanding. But yourselves, be wary of accepting the confused speech and view or opinion of Simon Petrus, and from making it your avowal or belief. For if you nevertheless do this, you will not live your life, or you will lose, or not have, a right and valuable life. For consider, only those who live their lives in knowledge and truth will be victorious, but those who live their lives in untruth and unknowledge will not gain, or will not have a right and valuable life. What would it profit the human being if they should gain the whole world, yet still damage their spirit or consciousness? Or how can the human being help his or her spirit or consciousness if he or she is not mighty in reflection or thought, and does not grasp or recognize and understand the spirit, or creation-spirit, in the laws and recommendations of the creation? Truly I say to you, there are several here who will not taste the power of the knowledge of the Spirit, or spiritual knowledge, in this life, for truly they will first grasp or learn this in their next lives as new selves or new personalities. The human spirit, or consciousness, is unknowing for so long until it is first made knowing through the thinking and inquiry. And the spirit in the human being, or part piece of creation spirit, is not a creation of the human being, him or herself, but is a limited or tiny part of the creation given to the human being, which must be made knowing and wise through inexorable learning, as is also true of his or her own spirit or consciousness. And once the spirit, or part piece of creation spirit, has learned in full measure, because the human being has learned with his or her own spirit or consciousness, then it proceeds to become one with the creation, since the creation too learns and lives, or lives in constant growth. The creation is timeless, and thus the spirit in the human being, or part piece of creation spirit, is also timeless, which is given to him or her by the creation. The teaching of knowledge is extensive and not easy, but it is truly the way to the life that is manifold in its nature. The human being's life lies in the determination of working out the near wisdom of his or her spirit or consciousness, and the spirit in him or her, or part piece of creation spirit, in order that his or her life be lived in the fulfillment thereof, so that the one spirit or consciousness and the other spirit or spirit form are allowed to grow forth, or develop, evolve. Even when the human being burdens him or herself with incompleteness, or mistakes, errors, he or she acts according to a law of the creation, because he or she grasps or learns from it, and gathers recognition, or cognition, and knowledge, whereby he or she builds up, or forms, his or her own spirit, or consciousness, and through its power he or she is able to act, and also lets the spirit in him or her, or part piece of creation spirit, swell, or develop, evolve. Without unreasonableness, or mistakes, errors, coming about, or errors being made, it cannot be possible, therefore, to gather discernment or understanding, cognition, knowledge, love, and wisdom, so that the spirit or consciousness becomes brought up or educated. Truly I say to you, the teachings of the chief priests, and the Pharisees and the scribes and the Sadducees are confused and false when they tell you that an incompleteness, or mistake, error, would be punished by the hazy picture, God, or fantasy form or delusional construction, God, or by the creation, because the incompleteness, or mistake, error, serves the recognition, or cognition, and the knowledge, and hence the progress of the spirit, or consciousness, of the human being, and the spirit in him or her, or spirit form, part piece of creation spirit, in the human being. Therefore, there is no punishable incompleteness, or mistake, error, if it serves the recognition, the knowledge, and the progress of the spirit or consciousness. Likewise, there is no acquired or inherited incompleteness, or no inheritable mistake, no inheritable error, and no punishment for such in this world or another world. Punishment of such an incompleteness, or mistake, error, would contradict all the laws of the nature, and thus all the laws of the creation. When an incompleteness, or mistake, error, is made, that is good for the recognition, or cognition, and the knowledge and the swelling, or progress, development, of the spirit, or consciousness, of the human being, and the spirit in him or her, or part piece of creation spirit in the human being, and its wisdom, there is no punishment, neither in this life nor in the living again of the spirit, or in a new life as a new self, or new personality. If the human being lives in the calling, or life task, of the near wisdom of his or her spirit, or consciousness, and the spirit in him or her, or part piece of creation spirit in the human being, he or she therefore commits incompletenesses, or mistakes, errors, and thereby comes to recognition and to knowledge. Then he or she leads a life that lies within his or her determination. But because the human being does not grasp or learn in proper sequence, or consistency, logic, or in accordance with the greatness of his or her own spirit, or consciousness, which is guided by the laws of the creation and led into things that must be descriptively accessible, since they are determined by laws and recommendations, the human being therefore misleads his or her spirit, or consciousness, and thoughts and impressions or feelings, and his or her actions, burdens him or herself with guilt, and exposes his or her inner expression, or nature being, to attacks from outside powers. In this manner the powers of the spirit, or consciousness powers, of other human beings affects the life of the individual for better or worse. Because human beings, now in this time, or at the present time, and in the coming time, are beginning to think and to recognize, they are in need of the teaching of the truth, which is the teaching of the prophets. And thus the true prophets had come as former celestial sons in order to teach the human species the true laws and recommendations of the creation and the knowledge about the truth and the life. So in the true teaching, and far away from the confused and false teachings of the false prophets, the Pharisees and Sadducees, and the high council and the scribes. But the people are still without understanding, and indulging in the false laws of the chief priests, the distorters of the writings, the Pharisees, and the Sadducees. Consequently, they do not recognize the new teaching in truth, which is the old teaching, the teaching of the prophets, which is called the teaching of truth, teaching of spirit, teaching of life. Lacking understanding, they curse the truth, which yet must get through. They curse the true prophets, and stone, kill, and impale them. But since the teaching of truth, teaching of spirit, teaching of life, must be brought among the people, the true prophets have to bear great burdens and suffering under the curse of the people. Just as they persecuted the true prophets, they also seek after my life, and will seek after the life of the prophet of the new time, or new time from the year 1844. The providence of the determination says that it shall also come true for me, insofar that I, an innocent man, will be declared guilty. However, it will not come to pass that I am killed, but, while in a state of near death, I will be considered dead for 3 days and 3 nights, and will be placed in a rock tomb, so that the parable of Jonah will be fulfilled. Helpers, or friends, from a distant land, who are well versed in the art of healing, will be my nurses and benefactors until my escape, or flight, from the tomb on the 3rd day. So then my calling, or mission, task, will be finished among foreign people in a distant land, with the rising sun, since my pathway leads me there. It shall come to pass. I will obtain a certain cognition, increase my knowledge, and generate a new power in the spirit, or consciousness, so that I can understand dying and near death, or powerlessness, and can teach about it.